It was a Tuesday, the kind of bland weekday where nothing usually happens, the kind of day you never expect to become the one that flips your entire world upside down. I had come home early from work because my boss decided to be generous for once and let everyone go after lunch, something about hitting quarterly targets or some nonsense. I didn't even call Andrea to let her know. I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe we'd catch a late lunch, talk, reconnect a little. God knows we hadn't really talked in weeks, not in a way that felt like anything more than exchanging updates. So I parked my car by the curb, let myself into our apartment, and immediately noticed something was off. It was too quiet. Andrea's coat was gone, but her laptop and keys were still on the counter. The car wasn't in the driveway, and that was weird, because she always took it if she went anywhere on foot. She hated walking more than a block unless it was inside a mall. The coat was the detail that got me. She always wore it if she was just taking out the trash or grabbing coffee across the street. She hadn't taken her keys, which meant she hadn't planned to go far, and yet the car was gone, which made zero sense. I stood in the kitchen for a minute, staring at her coffee cup on the table, still half full and lukewarm. I wasn't suspicious yet, not really, just puzzled. But I knew every habit she had. After 9 years together, you learn someone's patterns the way you learn a song by heart. You don't notice the rhythm until it skips. I opened the fridge, closed it again, then walked out of the apartment and decided to take a short drive around the neighborhood, just to see if she had maybe gone to the nearby pharmacy or picked something up at the corner store. We only had one car, so I took my work vehicle, which had no logo on it, just a plain silver SUV. It gave me a little bit of invisibility I didn't even realize I needed. I turned left at the light, drove past the gas station. Nothing. I was about to loop back when I spotted our car parked awkwardly behind an old brown sedan, tucked behind some bushes 2 streets over from our place. Andrea never parked there, especially not halfway on the curb like that. I slowed down. My heart didn't start racing yet, not then. I was still convincing myself it was a coincidence, that maybe she ran into someone or needed to help a neighbor. But when I saw the back window fogged up and the faint shadow of movement inside, something in my chest dropped. I coasted past slowly, circled the block like I was looking for a lost cat, and parked across the street facing the opposite direction. From that angle, I had a clear view of our car, and that's when I saw it. Her head leaned back against the headrest, eyes closed. Someone else's head was between her legs. The engine was off. The windows cracked just slightly. The kind of scene you couldn't misinterpret no matter how hard you tried. For a minute, I just sat there. No anger, no yelling, just this weird stillness in my brain, like everything had shut down to avoid crashing. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe heavy. I watched, frozen, numb, like I was watching strangers in a movie that just happened to be playing in the vehicle I paid for. I could see the rhythm of movement, the way her hands tangled in his hair, the expression on her face, and all I could think about was how she used to look at me like that. Then I remembered the coffee on the kitchen table. She left it there because she wasn't planning to be gone long. This wasn't a trip or a getaway. It was a quick break in the middle of her day. She hadn't even locked the damn doors. I didn't move. I couldn't. I sat and watched until it was over. I watched her fix her hair in the rearview mirror, watched him wipe his face with her sleeve like it was nothing. I watched her check her phone, probably for missed calls or texts from me, then lean over to kiss him one more time before they stepped out of the car, both laughing, both adjusting their clothes. That's when I took the photo. Not of their faces, just their hands, entwined, stepping away from my car together like they were going to grab a sandwich or walk a dog. I snapped the picture, pocketed my phone, and drove home. No screeching tires. No horn. Just the quiet hum of the SUV as I headed back to the apartment we both still called home. When she walked in 15 minutes later, her hair damp from a quick rinse in the sink, she smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Hey, you're home early," she said, like it was just another Tuesday. "Boss finally gave you a break?" I looked at her for a long time. I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to shove the picture in her face and demand answers. But all I said was, "Yeah. I figured we could have lunch together." She smiled again. "Let me just change real quick." I nodded and watched her walk toward the bedroom. I didn't follow. I just stood in the kitchen, staring at her coffee, still untouched. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't toss and turn or pace the room dramatically. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Andrea's soft breathing beside me. She had taken a long shower before bed and slipped under the covers like nothing had happened. She told me about her day in a low voice, mixing small details about her coworkers with fake annoyance about a traffic light that kept turning red near the office. I nodded in the right places. I smiled when she smiled. I kept my tone normal. But in my head, I was playing back every second of what I had seen, every move she made in that car, every laugh she shared with the guy who clearly wasn't new to her. She had kissed him like she missed him. She had touched him with confidence, like it wasn't their first time. That was the part that kept clawing at me. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't awkward. It was familiar. She didn't even look guilty when she came home. The next morning, I got up before her, made coffee I didn't drink, and sat on the couch scrolling through nothing on my phone. I wasn't sure what to do yet. Confronting her right away felt like handing her a script she was probably already rehearsing. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted to know what she would do next, now that the secret was still safe in her head but not in mine. So I waited. I watched. I paid attention in a way I hadn't in months. Every time she glanced at her phone and smiled. Every time she stepped into another room to take a call. Every time she said she was running out for something quick. I logged it all. I didn't accuse. I didn't act angry. I became invisible in my own home, and she didn't even notice. That was the first real punch to the stomach. She didn't notice because she was too busy with whatever life she had been building when I wasn't looking. It took 3 days for me to get what I needed. I waited for the right moment, one where she wouldn't have the time to clean things up. On Friday, she said she was going out for a walk, which was new. She hated walking. I waited until I heard the door shut, then grabbed her work tote from the dining table and dumped it out on the couch. Nothing too exciting. Some receipts, a couple of pins, her badge, and a small gray notebook that looked new. I opened it without hesitation. She had always kept paper notes for work, so I expected to see task lists or half-finished drafts. What I found were initials, times, and addresses. No dates, no names, just a string of coded entries that didn't look anything like a marketing manager's notes. I snapped pictures of every page. My hands weren't even shaking. It felt mechanical at that point, like I had slipped into a mode where emotion had taken a back seat to information. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I even reclipped the receipt that had been attached to a post-it. I had no interest in her discovering that I knew anything yet. I wanted to gather every scrap of her secret life before she could hide it. I wanted the truth, not her edited version of it. That evening, she was extra cheerful. She brought home Thai food, which she only did when she was feeling guilty about something. She curled up next to me on the couch, let her legs rest across mine, and scrolled through her phone with her screen tilted slightly away. I didn't say a word. I just watched her fingertips dance over the screen like they were flirting with someone I couldn't see. I didn't look over. I didn't have to. I already knew what was in the notebook. I recognized 2 of the street names. One of them matched the spot where I saw our car on Tuesday. The other one? It was 3 blocks from her office, close enough for a lunchtime visit. The next morning, I followed her again. No disguise, no dramatic chase, just a slow, careful trail from a few car lengths behind. She didn't look in her rearview mirror once. She was relaxed, comfortable. She parked behind a small complex that looked like it had short-term rentals. I waited. 15 minutes later, she came back out, hair slightly messier than before, fixing her shirt like she'd been in a rush. She didn't even check her reflection in the side mirror. She just drove off like nothing happened. I followed her back to our apartment, then circled the block and parked down the street. I needed air. Not peace, not clarity, just a few minutes away from her voice. That night, I didn't sleep either, but this time I wasn't numb. I was furious. And underneath the fury was something worse, shame. Shame that I had spent the last few days pretending I didn't know my wife was doing something with another man in our car, in rented apartments, in places she never bothered to hide all that well. Shame that I had watched it unfold without stopping it, like some weak bystander in my own life. Shame that I hadn't figured it out sooner. I lay there with my eyes open, my body still, and my mind burning. She shifted in her sleep, rolled toward me, placed her hand on my chest like she always did when she wanted comfort, and I let it rest there. Not because I wanted her touch, but because I needed to feel how cold it had become. She had no idea what was waiting for her when she walked in that afternoon. I had waited long enough, collected enough, and now I wanted her to feel it, all of it, in one hit. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the notebook open in front of me with the specific page marked, the one with the address 2 streets over and the time written beside it. There was no need for theatrics. Just this little piece of paper, her lazy handwriting, and the silence of a man who had reached the end of the line. She came through the door like she always did, Keys tossed into the bowl near the entrance. Bag dropped on the floor. Casual shoes kicked off without looking. She didn't even glance at me until she came into the kitchen and saw the notebook. She froze halfway between a step, eyes locking on mine, and then shifting to the page in front of me. I said nothing. I didn't move. I just waited for her to speak first. She stared at it like she couldn't decide whether to pretend she didn't know what it was or just lie straight through it. What's that? Her voice cracked slightly, not enough for someone else to notice, but I'd known her long enough to hear the strain behind it. You tell me, I said, calmly. My fingers tapped once on the page, but I didn't look down. She stepped forward, slowly, trying to keep herself composed, but her eyes were moving too fast, like she was trying to piece together which lie would fit the moment best. It's just some places I went, she said, pulling out the chair opposite me but not sitting down. For work. Meetings. Lunches. You know. I shook my head once and turned the notebook toward her. 2 streets over. Our car. Tuesday afternoon. That wasn't a work lunch. That was you with some guy in the back seat. She swallowed hard. Her arms were still crossed, but her hands were twitching. She glanced at the door, like she considered leaving, then back at me when she realized she wouldn't make it more than 2 steps without making this worse. Who told you that? She asked, like she was trying to figure out how much I knew rather than answer what I'd actually said. No one told me anything. I saw it. I followed you. I watched you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You were in our car. You thought you were careful. You weren't. Her face changed then. The polite, controlled look cracked just slightly. She tried to blink it away, but it was there: panic, shame, something close to embarrassment but not quite enough to be called guilt. She stepped back from the chair, paced once behind it, and then faced me again. Look, it wasn't supposed to be anything, she said, her voice starting to pick up speed like she was running through a list of excuses she'd written in her head weeks ago. It started a couple months ago. I didn't plan for it. I didn't go looking for it. He paid attention. He listened. I raised an eyebrow. So you blew him in the car because he asked how your day was? Don't say it like that, she snapped, finally showing some emotion. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said, pushing the chair back and standing. That's what you did. In the middle of the day. With someone you've clearly been seeing more than once. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally sat down. Her hands were clasped now, fingers pressed tight together like she was holding something in. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said, staring at the notebook. It started off just talking. I was lonely. You've been distant for months. I laughed once, low and bitter. You were lonely? You shut down every conversation we had. You said you were tired. You said you needed space. I gave you space. You filled it with him. I didn't want this to happen, she said, voice quieter now. It just did. And I didn't know how to stop it. I leaned on the table with both hands. You could have stopped it by not pulling off 2 blocks from our home and climbing into the back seat. You could have stopped it by not putting fake addresses in this notebook. You could have stopped it the first time he touched you. She didn't answer right away. She rubbed her hands together, looked away, then finally looked back at me. I don't love him, she said. I straightened up. I didn't ask if you did. She looked surprised by that, and maybe she expected me to break down, ask questions about him, scream, cry, beg, demand details. But I didn't care who he was. I didn't care if he was married or single or someone from her job. The only detail that mattered was what I already saw. I want to fix this, she said, standing now, like proximity might change my mind. I don't want this to be the end. You already ended it, I said. You just forgot to tell me. We stood there in silence, not like 2 people fighting, but like 2 people who had just walked out of the same burning building, both knowing there was no way to go back inside. She reached out, barely, like she wanted to touch my hand or maybe stop me from walking away. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just stared at her hand and waited for her to realize I wasn't going to reach back. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded once. Yeah, me too. I didn't speak much the next few days. I didn't leave either. I stayed in the same house, ate at the same table, slept in the same bed. I didn't give her the luxury of distance. I wanted her to see me, constantly, and wonder what I was planning. I didn't scream, didn't argue again, didn't even ask her who the guy was. That silence drove her crazy more than anything I could have said. She kept trying to fix things in her own way, making dinner, folding my laundry without asking, buying the kind of beer I liked even though I hadn't touched a drop since the day I saw her in the car. I didn't touch the food. I rewashed the clothes, and I left the beer in the fridge. I wasn't interested in the performance. I was watching her unravel under the weight of my calm, and that gave me more satisfaction than yelling ever could. By Saturday, she was asking questions I knew were coming. "Are you going to leave?" she asked as I was getting dressed. "I need to know what's going to happen." I didn't answer right away. I adjusted my shirt collar, checked my phone, then looked her in the eye. "I already left," I said. "You just didn't notice when." She looked like she was about to cry again, but I turned and walked out before she could say anything else. I had work to do. Not emotional work, not soul-searching, just real, calculated work. I made a list, went through files, pulled out everything with her name on it. Bills, accounts, joint responsibilities, everything she had a hand in. I wanted to know what her world looked like with me in it, because I was about to pull out of every corner of it and let her figure out what it meant to live without me while still technically living next to me. I called my bank, opened a separate account, moved my money. I called the phone company and had the account split so she would now have to manage her own bill. I pulled out of the utilities, changed the passwords on every shared streaming service, and even took the spare car key off her ring without her noticing. Everything we had that was shared was now mine alone or no longer hers. I wasn't punishing her by yelling or making scenes. I was removing myself from every part of her life, one detail at a time. She didn't notice any of it at first. She still used the heating as if I was paying for it. She still clicked on Netflix like nothing had changed. When she called the customer service line and found out she was no longer listed on the account, she came into the living room holding her phone. "What the hell is this?" she said, clearly agitated. "I can't log into anything." I didn't look up. I was sitting at the desk going over some paperwork. "You're not on those accounts anymore," I said. "I took care of it." Her voice cracked again. "You can't just shut me out of everything. You shut me out of our marriage the day you opened your legs for someone else in my car," I said without changing my tone. "This is me catching up." She left the room in silence. She had no defense, no justification. She had nothing left to offer but her presence, and even that didn't carry weight anymore. The next day, I packed a bag. Just a couple of shirts, my laptop, some chargers. I wasn't going far. I didn't need to. I just needed her to see the bag and sit with the idea of it. I placed it on the bed and zipped it up while she watched from the doorway. "Are you going somewhere?" "Yeah," I said, without looking up. "For how long?" "As long as I feel like it." She stepped closer, voice lower, trying to get soft again like that would change anything. "Can we at least talk before you go?" "We already talked," I replied. "Everything else now is just me deciding how much of you I want to keep in my life." So far, the answer is nothing. I didn't even take the bag. I left it there and walked out with just my wallet and keys. I went to my brother's place, grabbed a beer, and sat on his balcony while telling him everything in full detail. I wasn't asking for advice. I just wanted someone else to know, someone outside of her. "Damn," he said, shaking his head. "So what now?" "I'm not divorcing her yet," I said. "Not until I make sure she feels every bit of what she did. Then I'll walk." I returned that night, and she was still awake, sitting on the couch like a kid waiting for their parent after a screw-up. She didn't say anything when I walked in. I didn't either. I went to bed. She followed 10 minutes later, curled up on her side like she used to when she was tired. She didn't try to touch me. I think she finally understood that the version of me she used to know was gone, and the one who replaced him didn't care about saving the marriage. She waited until Sunday morning to ask for the conversation she thought would fix everything. She had cleaned the entire apartment the night before, made a full breakfast even though I hadn't eaten anything she cooked in days, and set 2 mugs of coffee at the table like we were about to talk about our weekend plans. I didn't sit down. I stood there, watching her try to act like we were still married in any real way, and she looked up at me with this kind of desperate patience, like if she just stayed quiet long enough, I'd break the silence first. I didn't. I leaned against the wall and let her speak. "I know you don't want to hear anything I have to say," she started, not looking directly at me, "but I need you to hear it anyway." "Go ahead," I said, not because I wanted to hear it, but because I wanted to know if she was going to lie again or finally admit something useful. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I didn't do it because of you. I didn't cheat because you weren't good to me. You've always been more than enough. I did it because I was selfish and weak, and I let something happen that never should have even started. That's all." I asked. "That's your explanation?" She looked up then. "You want me to say more?" "Fine." I thought it was just a tension at first, something harmless. But it turned into something else, and I didn't stop it. Every time I thought about ending it, I told myself it would be more complicated to explain than to just ignore. I never thought you'd find out. I didn't even think about what it would do to you. And now I live with it every day. I sat down then, not because I felt sorry for her, but because I finally wanted to speak without pacing. I watched you, I said. I saw you in the car. I saw you come home and kiss me like it was any other day. I listened to you lie without a blink. And you know what stuck with me the most? You didn't even look nervous. You looked happy. You looked relaxed. You knew what you were doing, and you were okay with it. You didn't break down crying. You didn't show guilt. You didn't slip up. You were just fine. She didn't interrupt. She sat with her hands in her lap and let me go on. You keep saying it was a mistake, but I think you enjoyed it. That's the part that makes this impossible to move past. I don't believe you were lonely or broken or any of that. I think you did it because you could, because you knew I wouldn't find out, because you had the time and the cover and the confidence. You made choices every step of the way. You weren't pulled into anything. You walked into it. Her face dropped then, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, exhausted way of someone who realized nothing she could say would reverse the clock. I don't want to lose you, she said, finally reaching for the mug in front of her and holding it with both hands like it gave her something to grip. You already lost me, I replied. You just don't want to deal with the fallout. Are you going to leave for good? She asked. I'm not rushing anything, I said. You rushed enough for both of us. Right now, we're roommates. We split bills, we stay out of each other's way, and we don't pretend to be anything we're not. You don't touch me. You don't talk to me about him. And eventually, I'll decide what's next. But you don't get to be the one who walks away looking like the sad one who tried. I never wanted to end us, she said, and there was finally something honest in her voice. Even when I was doing it, I didn't think about ending our marriage. I know that sounds horrible, but it's the truth. I didn't do it to replace you. I did it because I wasn't thinking straight. No, I said. You were thinking exactly straight. You knew I'd stay. You knew I was stable. That's why you came home after every one of those meetings. That's why you didn't even change your routine. You thought I'd be here no matter what. And I probably would have been if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. That was your mistake. You got sloppy. You stopped caring if I noticed. And now, you don't get to control the outcome. She sat there for a long time after I finished, staring at the mug, her knuckles white from how tightly she was holding it. I didn't say anything else. I got up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out again. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I didn't feel like I owed her anything after that. Not a second chance, not a plan, not even closure. I had said what I needed to say. She was the one who ruined it. I was just letting it play out to the end. 2 weeks passed without a single meaningful word between us. We existed in the same space like coworkers who had long since stopped liking each other, but still needed to get through the day. She woke up before me most mornings and left for work without saying anything. I would come home after a walk or errands and find her sitting on the couch with her laptop or scrolling on her phone, barely lifting her head as I walked past. We didn't argue. There wasn't even tension left. It was just dead air between two people who had nothing left to say. I kept the same schedule, kept my bag by the door, and answered any attempt at conversation with short, dry responses that made it clear there was no interest left. She got the message quickly enough. Even her small attempts to cook or ask if I needed anything stopped. There was no warmth, no anger, just silence that became normal faster than I expected. During that time, I started visiting apartments. I didn't tell her. I didn't need to. She had given up her right to know where I was going the day she climbed into the back seat of our car with someone else. I found a one-bedroom near my work, nothing fancy but clean, quiet, and mine. I signed the lease, scheduled the move, and started packing the few things I cared to take. I didn't need much. I wasn't taking the bed, or the TV, or the plates we picked together. I left those for her. I packed the chair I always sat in, my computer, my clothes, some personal items, and a few things from the closet I had forgotten I even kept, photos from before we were married, old notebooks, receipts from trips that felt like a different lifetime. The process didn't hurt. It felt like cleaning up after a long party that went stale. No sadness, just finality. The day I moved out, I didn't wait for her to leave. I wanted her to see it. I loaded everything into the truck myself, no help, no drama. She came home halfway through, saw the boxes, and froze in the doorway. I didn't stop what I was doing. I taped up another box and stacked it on the others. So that's it, she asked from behind me. I turned around, met her eyes, and nodded once. Where are you going? She asked, quieter this time. Somewhere that doesn't feel like a lie, I said. You don't need to know more than that. She stepped forward, hands slightly raised like she wanted to offer help or maybe stop me, but I wasn't interested in either. I didn't think it would really come to this, she said, her voice breaking again. You should have thought about that before you started sneaking around, I said. You didn't just cheat. You treated me like a placeholder. I was wrong, she said. I know that. You knew it while you were doing it, I replied. You knew every time you lied, every time you said you were working late, every time you came home and looked me in the eye. You weren't confused. You were just hoping I'd stay blind long enough for you to get away with it. She didn't argue. She stepped back and nodded, tears already sliding down her face. I really did love you, she said. I don't care, I answered. You broke it. You don't get to explain it into something it wasn't. That was the last thing I said before I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't give her a speech. I just walked out and didn't look back. That first night in the new apartment was quiet, but not in the same way it had been in the last few weeks. It wasn't heavy or sad. It was just quiet. I made dinner, sat on the floor with a paper plate and a glass of water, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to pretend anything. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what she was doing. I didn't think about what I lost. I just sat there, full of something I hadn't felt in weeks, relief. In the weeks that followed, she tried contacting me. A few texts, some emails, all saying things like, "Can we talk?" And, "I miss you," and, "I made a mistake." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to discuss. The second I found her with someone else, everything we built turned into something else, something fake, something I wanted nothing to do with. I filed the divorce paperwork without telling her and had it delivered by mail. I signed everything cleanly, didn't ask for anything extra, didn't try to make it painful. She had already done that part. I just wanted out. Looking back, I don't regret anything except not trusting my instincts sooner. I saw the signs. I ignored them. I gave the benefit of the doubt because I believed in what we had. But she didn't. And the second someone showed her a little attention, she chose them over everything we built. That's not someone I ever want in my life again. I didn't stay angry. I didn't spiral into bitterness. I moved on. Because that's what you do when someone shows you who they are. You believe them, and then you walk away. I didn't get revenge. I didn't destroy her life. I just took myself out of it. That was enough. That was all I needed. And now, I'm doing fine. I wake up when I want. I come home to peace. I don't walk on eggshells. I don't check my rearview mirror, and I don't wonder if someone's lying to me. I'm not interested in dating yet. I'm not trying to rebuild what I had. I'm just living, day by day, without the weight of pretending something still worked when it was already broken. That's all I really wanted. Not closure. Just honesty. And I got it, even if it came too late.